Katrina, what is up? I am so stoked to have you on It Pays to Write today. I found you like so many other people on the show. Thankfully, the LinkedIn algorithm gods pushed you into my feed. I think from another podcast. I have to go dig back into it and find out. But I was immediately pulled into your headline, everything you're doing. You're a podcast host. You've got a ton of great episodes with some really amazing people out there. But I don't want to get too carried away and too excited. I want you to tell everybody here today who you are, what you do, what kind of fun projects you're working on.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much, Jack. And thank you for having me on the show. It's not every day a host gets to be a guest. So I
So
really,
fun.
yeah, super fun. And I'm relishing this moment. So thank you for that. As far as what I'm doing now, I mean, I don't even know where I feel like the intro you just gave put my head in one frame of mind. And then I'm like, okay, switching gears to what do I do? What projects am I working on? Like pull it back. I'm like, yeah, I'm so great. I have a podcast. And what's funny is so many people kind of misconstrue my personal brand on LinkedIn. And a lot of times people think that that is my full-time job. And it's a question or an assumption that I field relatively often. So I'll just nip it in the bud right off the bat. I do have a regular full-time 9 to 5, 8:30 to 4:30 Eastern job, right? I have a W-2, and that's kind of where I like to play for getting my bills paid because it's a lot less pressure. And then that keeps my hobby and the podcasting and the things I do outside of work fun and enjoyable for me. And I don't have to have that pressure of, is this going to put food on the table? And I know for a lot of entrepreneurs, that's the case. And that's probably one of the biggest reasons I have steered clear of true entrepreneurship because I don't want to have to think about my job or my work 24/7. I'm definitely willing to go above and beyond and outside that 9 to 5, but I don't want it to be my livelihood.
Gosh, that is so well said and well put. Because I think there's this this misconception that I think has become like overstated and cliche, where people are like, "Dude, you got to leave your day job and you just got to double down on your side hustle." And it's like, no, 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 no. Keep your day job, and then if this is your hobby and a fun thing you like to do, that you can turn into a path to monetization, or like whatever your goal is for a percentage of your day job income, or maybe even matching it, it's like, do that. So I think that's great because, like you said, you have consistency and security, and like you're going to get your check every month, and you can also do all of these other amazing things. So like right before you came on the show, and I think this is so fun to talk about. So I personally, and my kind of joke about myself is like, I don't really have any hobbies. It's like I work, I go to the gym. My wife and I love playing like board games and checking out breweries and like live music and stuff. But hobbies wise, I'm not a sports guy. I'm not a video game guy. I'm not a golfer. I'm terrible at golf. I'm terrible at most sports. Like building my brand and podcasting and writing on LinkedIn are my hobbies. And I fell into it just because I love it. And that's what I want to spend my free time doing. So like, tell me about your journey into content creation and like how you got into this. And let's chop it up about that for a second. I think that'd be cool to
Yeah,
talk about. Yeah.
absolutely. And that really resonates with me, Jack, because we even talked about this in DMs on LinkedIn. Like, hey, how do you find time to do all this? Why are you blowing up your brand right now? What does your wife think about you talking with all these strangers? Blah, blah, blah. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of times I get similar pushback. And I think it's because we are, child-free people existing in a business space, and people are like, how do you have time to do this? You must not be focused at work. You seem so distracted. And all I can say to those objections, my rebuttal to them, if you will, is we're just prioritizing our time differently, right? A lot of us have the same hours in the day. Some of us have similar resources, but at the end of the day, we're all making different choices that hopefully align with our goals, but it determines how we live our life, right? You and I right now, we're recording on a Sunday afternoon. Other people are probably watching football. That's not
Yes. Yes.
and I just want to point that out too, because it's like we're doing this in our free time. It's not cutting into the 9 to 5. Maybe when this is posted, people see it during their 9 to 5, and I love that for them. But that doesn't mean that that's when the bulk of my time is being spent on these things, on these extracurriculars. So dialing back to content for me, I started really with video while I was still working in retail, and I was a district manager at the time. So I had a very for me, lucrative career. And I loved my job and I loved connecting with the customers that were walking into the stores. And prior to that, I was doing door to door sales. So I was going to where my customers were. And all of it was face to face interaction. And I loved it. But there was this opportunity to expand my network outside of the people that I just may organically be crossing paths with in real time. Sorry, let me say that again. Well, I'm not
You're good. Go for it.
just like, okay, so there was just a chance for me to meet people outside of, crossing paths in real time where you're meeting people organically. I wanted to make it digital, right? And this was before the pandemic. This was just kind of a nice to have at this point. So I started getting involved with content creation through video and actually writing, which I know is a big part of the podcast that you're launching. It pays to write. I think so many of us enjoy writing in different capacities, whether you're writing code or you're writing posts or you're writing novels or you're writing, autobiographies, whatever it is. We have this creative outlet that we want to get off of our chests. And so often we rely on, let's say, celebrities to have that platform. But the nice thing about the internet and the way the world is now, any person can really create that for themselves, so you don't have to wait to become something or to arrive or achieve a certain level of status to start doing this content. And that's where it was for me, right? So I'm a district manager in a retail store recording myself in between customers coming in and out of the store. And that's how I started. And I would just say to anyone who wants to start, I mean, you really just have to start. You put yourself out
Mm,
there, and then later on, if you want to get into SEO and you want to make it, monetized, go for it. But it doesn't need to have a huge plan ahead of just getting it started. And I'll pause there, but I do have more to say about how it's transformed over the years for me.
yeah, I think, gosh, so many important notes in there. Going back to what you first said about, it's hard. I think it's hard for people to understand that something that looks like work to them, of like, I write on the internet and I host a podcast and I edit video and I'm recording one of these on Sunday morning instead of like going to brunch with my friends or like watching football for like 4 or 5 hours. It's so funny how they think like a thing that we're doing that's productive, that's also enjoyable, eats into our time more than like, dude, you literally just watched football for 8 hours and like drank beer and ate hot wings. Like how, like,
Right.
it's like, and you do that like 2 other nights on the weekend. It's like, this is just what we enjoy doing. And I think we are at the distinct benefit that we do like something that looks like work to other people. But I'll also say, and like you brought in creativity too, I don't think we have enough creative outlets in our life. And I think people forget how fulfilling creativity in general is, because we get so programmed to like, you work, you shut down from your 9 to 5, or you work 12 hours a day and then you're exhausted. And then you just want to like, DoorDash some dinner and pop open a bottle of wine and just like chill and go to bed and like do the same thing again and escape your life on the weekends.
Hmm.
And creativity is such a fulfilling part of life. And I think school and culture kind of condition it out of us, of like, creativity is not going to pay the bills. And it's like, yeah, but creativity is something that makes you feel alive as a person. And because of the internet and because, distribution and creativity and building an audience is democratized with these amazing tools, yeah, creativity can lead to something awesome. Like, 40, 50 years ago, if you were going to try to make a career as a writer, it's like, okay, you either need to sell the next best, like, New York Times novel, or be like like I had a guy on the podcast who's written, I think Derek wrote 18 fantasy novels in like 12
In
years.
12 years. Yeah, I saw that. That was
Yeah,
incredible.
it's amazing. So it's like back that like 40, 50 years ago, or even 20, it's like you had to like hit it big and it was very narrow. And now it's like you can have a niche blog or a niche YouTube channel or something, and that can be your income. Or it can just be like a fun thing that you enjoy that's growing in the background over time. So kind of tell me, like we were talking about before the show, that you decided to like launch your podcast in the pandemic. And I think that's so cool and so smart and wise of you that you did that, because that's when the format started to like really escalate and blow up. And I think visibility for podcasts across the board went up. So how did you come to that? Like what were the events like leading up to that like?
Yeah, and I'm happy to dive into those and just want to address one thing you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So many people in the world live for the weekend, right? They're trying to escape their lives and they're trying to do something that distracts them and numbs them from whatever it is they don't like about their life. And I have made so many strides in my own personal life. I encourage as many people I talk to do the same. I know not everyone can, but I think it's so important to know we're all going to die at some point, right? And to run away from your life, what's the point of that? You get this one life, you can experiment with it, you can change it, you can iterate, and to have these creative outlets during the week or on the weekends and have something to look forward to is more motivating to me than anything. And if you're feeling, depressed or anxious, it helps to have these sorts of North Stars that you created for yourself that really come from within. It's something intrinsic that is natural to you. And exactly like you're saying, Jack, people see us podcasting and they're like, oh my God, that seems like a lot of work. I would hate that. Great. That's not for you. But there probably is something out there that makes you feel just as alive as we feel in this, environment. And it doesn't feel like work to you, but to someone else,
Mhm.
it might look, really, hairy, scary. So anyway, just throwing it out there, another, gem of encouragement to anyone trying to do this or do anything that just doesn't make you try to escape your life all the time.
Mhm.
I want you to enjoy your life, if you're
Yes,
listening
of
to this.
course.
So back to the pandemic. So now we're coming up on almost 6 years. COVID-19 started in 2019 around the world, hit the US in 2020, as we all know. And I was working in Manhattan at the time. I was in a corporate sales job selling into C-suite IT departments. And this was post retail world, right? So now I've moved from being in a store where consumers are coming to me to being in an office in a high rise in Manhattan where I have to go out and find clients and not just any clients, right? These are the top echelon of their companies. And part of it was in person, part of it was virtual. So we're kind of towing the line at this point, even with office hours. We were hybrid. We could work from home some days of the week and go into the office some days of the week. Once the city started getting sick, which was around, I would say even February, we started hearing about different outbreaks. Things were on the news. No one was taking it seriously yet at this point, but I kind of had the flexibility and freedom to work from home a little bit more often and not go into the city. And for me personally, it was just a health thing. Like, I don't want to get sick and I had no idea what it was going to turn into, but it was a chance to just get my home office going. I started my MBA at the time, which was remote as well through the University of Arizona. And I was just, creating a desk space over here and a lounge space over there. And I was enjoying this work from home environment, which I hadn't leaned into prior to that. And it was a couple days a week. I didn't have the most ergonomic setup by any means, but I'm just painting this picture for anyone who wants to go back in time with me in this moment. But
I love it.
and I'm like this, Jack. When I tell stories, it's like every detail that comes to mind is coming out of my
This
mouth.
is good though because I think people can see that picture of what it was like in that time for themselves of doing the same thing. This is great.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So, when the pandemic hit, so now it's a month and a half or so later, mid-March, and I have small business owners from my past life of working in retail who are being told they have to close their doors. They're being forced to bunker down basically, and good luck for the next 2 weeks. And for them, 2 weeks of closing their shop could mean being out of business forever. And then you see big giants like Walmart that were able to stay open. And my heart completely went out to these small business owners who had basically paid my bills in the past, right? Like I used to either work for them or they were my customers or whatever the case was. And now they were up against the wall. And I luckily was able to keep my corporate job through the pandemic, but that wasn't the case for so many people. I had this platform on LinkedIn, which at the time was maybe 2,000 people, 2,500 people. And I thought it was great. I was like, I have this great network. Come talk on my platform. I want to share my stage with you. I want to give you a place to speak your truth in this moment, share your voice, and make people feel less alone. And it was so just about that. Originally, it wasn't even a podcast, right? I interviewed two different small business owners, one I used to work with and one I met through the company I was working for at the time. She was part of an advertising marketing scheme, or it's not really a scheme, like just what would you call it? Oh, a campaign. I'm in marketing and I should know these words, right? Yeah. So anyway, her quote was plastered on the wall. And ironically, her quote at the time was, if my internet goes out, I may as well not be in business, right? I may as well be closed. And how telling, what foreshadowing that was for what we were all just about to go through. And she was my second guest that I interviewed. And when I posted those two interviews, one of my colleagues was like, "Hey, Katrina, you really have something here. You should run with it." And I'm thinking, run with it? Where am I going to run to? So as you know, how I process things, I took that back and I sat with it. So instead of running with it immediately, I was like, what could this look like? What do I want this to look like? Where are my values? How does that line up with my goals right now? What am I trying to achieve? Blah, blah, blah. I ask all these questions to myself to map out what could this look like if I, test my audience and people are interested and they want to see more video content. I mean, who wants to see me doing video, right? And at that time, I was not willing to put myself on camera for any length of time. I would never have done a solo podcast, right? I wasn't going to
Mm.
act like I knew everything or go on camera all the time or any of that. There was something a little comforting in having a guest come on. And as a fellow host, you'll understand this. You get to be on the side of the desk where you ask the questions and you listen. And you don't have to worry about being on stage. You don't have to worry about what are you going to say? Where are we going to take the conversation? That's really on the guest a lot of times. And yes, it's on the host to navigate through that. But for me, it just felt a lot less scary getting to be the host. And so blah, 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 right? So I
No, this is great.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, so then I create this show. I call it Winning Wednesday, and I decide to release an episode, once a week, every week for basically the whole first year. Um, and it morphed from just targeting small business owners to expanding to a way for us to continue networking virtually. So that's how it fed into my personal brand and my motivating factors. Prior to the pandemic, I would go to all the networking events. I met people on dating apps that turned into, professional connections instead. I'd go out to the bar and be like, "Are you on LinkedIn?" Like that is my MO.
Love
I
it.
I take business first and like personal second. And that's how I've always been. And when the pandemic hit, I was like, okay, great. I want to share my platform with people, but I also want to take it a step further and not only keep meeting people, but help people see how easy it is to meet new people and give them the chance to watch these episodes, listen to the podcast, and meet people through me. And that's really how it all started.
That's amazing. Honestly, like there's so many overlaps I feel like in our experience, and I'm envious because I think you caught the LinkedIn tidal wave before it happened.
Yeah.
You hear guys like the Justin Welsh's talk about he started writing on there in like the late 2010s, and I'm like, wow, that's some real foresight. And you had that, and I think we were talking about before the show of I mentioned to you I have missed having a community of like entrepreneurial, solopreneur people who are interested in building things on the side community in my life. And I love that you were actively doing that in the real world first. And then you brought that to your own platform that you're building. So when did it kind of start to click for you? Like when you were on LinkedIn of like, oh, this is the place. This is awesome. Cause it's like, I don't know. When I started writing on here and making friends, I was like, this could be a bona fide addiction. This is just too much fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great question. I still trace it back to those retail days when I made that first video. And I had written posts prior to then, but there was something about video. You're breaking the third wall or whatever it is, right? Where on TV shows where someone looks at the camera and you're connecting with someone at home. That's what video content was. It was a way to just take down whatever barrier and filter was out there. And at that time, there weren't the filters that exist today. Now we don't even know if it's AI or a real person. So that's a whole nother thing. But back
Mhm.
then, it was just, me, myself, and I, camera, 2-minute video post, and who was engaging, who was talking in the comments, who was messaging me. Do we want to have a quick coffee chat? Do we want to meet up for lunch? It was just that. It was as simple as that. And I think once this podcast started, so that, let's say for time wise, that could have been 2018. And then the podcast starts in 2020. So already for 2 years, I was building momentum and I probably took whatever my following was at the time, which could have just been like my college grads and my teachers that I knew, and then I started expanding into business. So by 2020, I had that around 2000 mark network on LinkedIn. And the podcast really took my network to higher heights. And now I've just hit 12,000. So for the last 5 years, I've added about 10,000 connections. And I really emphasize the word connections. I don't like to call people followers or any of that because that's not who they are to me. And I know
Mhm.
everyone has a different approach to networking, everyone looks at this differently. And there is really no judgment. I don't think there's any wrong way to network, but I just want to qualify my way of networking is truly about human connection. I want to know the people in my community and be able to have them top of mind. So when I meet someone else who has a need and is looking to meet someone, I know exactly who I want to introduce them to. And I don't need to say something like, why don't you go look at my 12,000 followers and see who you want me to introduce you to? Like,
Mhm.
that's cringy to me, but I know it works for other people. So again, no shade.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Like, yeah, there's definitely no shade in being like, hey, I've got an audience. Like, this is cool. It is what it is, you
Yeah.
know? But I think there's something like you said too. I see a lot of people refer to when they hit milestones, and I started doing this too because I love it. They're like, I now have like, 2,000 people or 10,000 people in my community. And I'm like, I love that because I'm like you where I don't like even though I've like played music my whole life and done some performance stuff, I've never liked the idea of like being on stage or on display in front of people. I've always liked the idea that like music or the performing arts or whatever, it's like building a connection. It's like creating an experience or a moment, or a memory or whatever that you're doing. And I love thinking it of that way too. I really appreciate you saying that. So so this is what's really interesting and like a big part of my mission right now, I feel like is I want to get more people creating content, writing, doing
Mhm.
video, something online. Um, whether it's just a creative outlet or it's like, hey, I want to see what I can do with this. Like, what are some of the benefits? And this doesn't have to be monetary. This can just be like, hey, I've met some cool people or I was inspired to do this or whatever. What are some of the cool benefits that you've seen in your own life from doing things like building a community on LinkedIn, building your podcast community?
Yeah. The one that comes top of mind immediately is a current project I'm working on. And I feel like that's how our brains work, right? There's probably many historical proof points I could point to, but I can only think about what I'm currently doing. It's almost like that shining syndrome that one of your guests talked about, like shiny object syndrome, where you're
Yes.
just like, squirrel, like so distracted immediately. So earlier this year, I interviewed a woman to be on my show, and I think she actually asked to be on my show. And whenever people ask to be on my show, I go through a whole different, decision-making process as to whether I'll have them on the show or not, and I'm sure you can
Sure.
relate to that. But long story short, I agreed to have her on the show. And when we were talking, I learned not only more about her life story, which is great because my show is all about tell me your life story and, what impact did that have on business. It's kind of this intersection of the human experience and business, which I really enjoy because that's where I sit and live. And she was telling me, how her journey of becoming transformed into her day job that she does now. And her day job is really this entrepreneurial endeavor in the publishing space. So she helps people become published authors, and not only that, it's not the typical one author to one book scenario. She really thrives in this environment of collaboration and collaborative authorship, which prior to that point, I mean, I knew of Chicken Soup for the Soul books, but I did not know about, a 12-person cohort coming together to write a book. And she planted such a seed within me that after that interview, it's still not even live yet. It's going to go live at the end of this year. But after that interview, I was like, oh my God, wait, I want to do what she's talking about. I want to see who in my network wants to write a book with me, right? So I kind of canvassed 15 different people, maybe not even 15, but no more than 15. And I said, hey, do you want to write this book with me? Blah, blah, blah. And we started jumping on these kind of monthly or every other month 1 hour cohort calls to flesh out if you want to be part of this project. And if so, what direction do we want to take it in? And over the last 6 months now, we've whittled it down. There's 6 of us. We're all women. This was not pre-planned. at first had a diverse network that I asked, and now it's down to the 6 of us. And I really couldn't be happier. I think everything happens for a reason and everything happens when it's supposed to and how it's supposed to. And so I'm very grateful to the community that we're building. And what's very interesting about that is I know each of them individually really well, but they don't know each other. And we're building a community virtually to be able to write a book together. And it's just a project I never would have even thought to do had I not first started this podcast 5 years ago, right? And then got asked by someone to be on the show. And then I hear what she does for a living. And I'm like, oh my God, blah, 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 light bulb moment. And then here we are, people who I've known in my network, I met this year or I've known for 10 years. They're all part of this collab book that we're writing together. And it's just really beautiful. So that's one awesome example of how writing content or podcasting or just following whatever creative outlet you have inspired within you can lead to so much more down the road.
That is super cool. And yeah, I think so many people, I don't know, like I think even we can get in this space as people who are marketers, right? If
Yeah.
people think you need a minimum viable number of people in your community to see something really positive happen. And it's really crazy because you do not at all. I mean, it's the same effect as real life of like if you go to a gym and there's 50 people there and it's a small mom and pop gym. And you start talking about that you're interested in writing a book there, and somebody else just goes, you know what, I've always thought about writing one and actually I have an idea. And then two other people are like, I've never thought about writing one, but I'm very interested. The internet's just a bigger place to put that out there. And it doesn't matter if you have 200 friends or 10,000. I read this really wild instance of a guy. I think this was during the pandemic. He was a software engineer and he was very, very good. And this is all like way above my head, but he was very good at doing something incredibly niche for specific types of businesses, to the point where like even as an SEO person who knows like search volume and research, I'm like, dude, there might be like 5 people out there that actually need what you can do. This guy had, I think it was under 1,000 followers on, it was, I think it might have been X. And he just like put it out there of like, hey guys, this is the kind of problem I'm solving. If you know anybody who's having this problem that I can help with. And no joke, it was like overnight, this guy started billing like thousands of dollars in consulting
Wow.
because like these other software engineers who like knew him and followed him and were interested in what he did, he's like, yeah, my company has this problem, or my friend works at a company who has this problem, or my buddy works at a SaaS company who knows somebody at a SaaS company. And no joke, the guy like reported what some of his freelance earnings became afterward. And it was like $10,000 a month extra, almost overnight, from an audience under 1,000 people for something wildly niche. And that's just the monetary benefit. He also brought up how many cool guys in his industry and people that he was able to connect with after. And I think I would encourage anybody to start this because I'm such a small fry right now. Like I've got like 3,200 people in my community on LinkedIn. I have 27 whole subscribers for my podcast on YouTube right now. It's so much fun that if nobody was paying attention, I would still want to have these conversations with cool, very bright people like yourself and everybody who I've talked to, just because it's like, hey, this is a cool new friend that I made through LinkedIn that's doing something awesome. And I leave all of these conversations, and I'm sure you do too. It's like I'm pumped up and inspired on life to like do more. Like I've learned so much. I'm like, I gotta like grab a notepad and like write some of this stuff down and figure out how I can test what Katrina told me after this. Like you don't need a ton of people paying attention to A, have a lot of fun, and B, see a lot of cool benefits. Like you said, the fact that you're working on a book with like 6 people right now, I mean, that's a cool experience. And most people in their life say, you know, I'd love to write a book someday. And most people don't. Look what you're doing. You're doing the thing.
Right. And that's something that we all said to each other too. We always wanted to write a book. We never got around to it. Let's do it together, rip the Band-Aid off, and then maybe the sequels will be our individual books that we always wanted to write. Um,
Yes.
I love so much of what you just said, and so many kind of metaphors and books come to mind. For instance, the butterfly effect, the tipping point. I think it's Malcolm Gladwell wrote that. And then just the fact that luck comes from being prepared, right? Opportunity rewards those who are ready. So the fact that that person posted on X and had nothing and then had that quote overnight success the next day and is now billing thousands of dollars. It's not by accident. It's the preparedness that led up to that moment, and it's identifying a problem and then having the solution paired right with it. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
staying in that place of venting about a problem, complaining, that's very low frequency energy. You want to move it to a higher frequency, bandwidth, and then
Mm-hmm.
connect with people who are looking to solve that same problem, but more efficiently. And if you have, the resources to get it done, then you are the solution for them. And that can be transferred to any business, anything you're working through. If you're trying to grow your community, you're solving for something, for someone else. And Jack, I love that you would do this for just one person. And so many times I think to myself, even if that one person is me, I'm still worth it. That one person that connects with my content is worth it. I want anyone listening or the two of us to walk away from this and just be better for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And the power of a conversation to change your perspective or change a habit or something that you do or your way of thinking is another really understated thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why we both started shows, right? Of like, it is, and this is like a funny segue I'd love to talk with you about. Like, I was telling you a little bit about before the show how starting a podcast is so funny because you get like this weird mix of feedback and responses because there's so many people who, especially post pandemic, were like, oh man, I should really like start a podcast, or I've always thought I wanted to and stuff. And it's like, yeah, like so does everyone, dude. And like everybody thinks they're going to be like the next big one, but most people never do it. Just like you were talking about writing a book. And I didn't want to be the person. I had mulled it over a long time. And I didn't want to be the person who is like, oh, I'm going to start a podcast and then never do it. It's like, if I'm going to say it, I'm going to do it at this point. But one thing that I was going to say that I think has been so cool, like, in terms of the mix of feedback that's been funny, it's like you tell your friends and family you're going to start a podcast. Oh, that's great. And then you don't like hear much. And then you start the podcast. And then I think I told you it's like this was literally a conversation I had with my wife the night before I started. She was like, dude, you should totally do this. I was like, you're right. I love this format. These people who are like great interviewers have changed my life. I'm doing it. Next morning, sent out 10 or 15 messages on LinkedIn. Keep in mind, I am nobody at this point. I had maybe 2,000 people in my LinkedIn community on here. I'm a nobody. And I sent out 10 to 15 messages of accounts that are, bigger than myself, like yours by several multiples. And like all these people who I just like made friends with in the comments and we joke around and have fun. And basically 100% of people were like, yeah, dude, I'd love to be on your show. And I was like, hey, full disclosure, it has no audience. This is kind of the vague topic. I want to talk about writing and the impact that it can have on your life. And I think just because the format is so well known and people are like, this is a cool piece of like legacy media that's going to live on somebody's YouTube channel or Spotify or Apple. And as an SEO person, that definitely helps out with your brand and putting yourself out there. It's so cool that so many people will say yes to something like that. And that gives you the ability to, like you've seen, it's like you build this network and community of people and friendships over this shared platform, which probably, both people love, the person who's being interviewed and you, a super high yes rate. You literally have a sitting, living piece of content with that person on the internet that can stay there forever. So that's always like a reminder. It's like building a history of friendship with someone, basically. And yeah, it's just such a cool format. And transitioning this into a question, because I know we both said we get really uncomfortable and we're the one who's talking too long, which is exactly why we ask questions and don't
Right.
don't normally be the person on the spot talking. Yeah, so Katrina, like my question here after that long monologue, which like I said is tough for us to go into because we're used to asking the questions and not answering them as hosts, is we were talking about before the show too of that we're all like rampant consumers today of all types of media. And it's impossible to avoid because smartphones are the most addictive thing like ever created. If you had to give some advice, because I think there are a lot of people listening to It Pays to Write that are interested in branching out, writing, connecting with other people, even just like building a community, not necessarily being, a superstar in their network or like making products or going into consulting or freelancing or building their own business. How do you think about that today, of like the balance between creativity and your production and consumption, and kind of the roles that those play in other people's lives? And you can speak to any of that, totally wide open.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that question. Of several different things came to mind as they always do. One of which actually ties back to something you were saying earlier about this digital, I'm going to call it a time capsule, but basically this portfolio that you now have, it's basically evergreen, depending on what your topics are. But in this case, I would say a lot of your content is evergreen. People can discover you 3 years from now and come back and binge your early episodes, and just see where you started. And that alone, I think, is inspiring. So when you're sitting on the couch or watching, TV on the TV, is that redundant? Yeah.
Watching TV. No, I like that.
Or
Watching
on your
TV on the
phone.
TV. That actually sounds like a pretty good indie band name. I
Yeah,
like that.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love live music, so I would definitely see someone performing if that was their band name. But, or if you're just like scrolling, doom scrolling on your phone, there's ways that consuming content serves a purpose of, disconnecting, and maybe you need that way to recharge your batteries. And then there's also the side of it where you're getting inspiration, you're getting ideas about your own content and how do you want to show up in the world? What behaviors do you want to change? Earlier, you mentioned something about how these conversations could even inspire someone to change their way of thinking or change a behavior. We are just a conglomerate of behaviors and habits, and ways of thinking, and all these things feed into that. Something else that comes to mind in this moment is the fact that I never used AI ever until the last month. And it's not because I didn't know about AI. I mean, I never did research on it, but I'm not the type of person to hear something in the general public. Like, I don't follow the news. So I'm not going to hear something that's mainstream and then want to go down the rabbit hole discovering it for myself. What
Mm,
more often happens is in my close circle, whether that's my network at work, the people I interact with every single day, or my, friend group, or, even neighbors that maybe I don't know as well, but they're people I'm coming across. Those are the people that I may hear something from and then take that word of mouth and run with it. So back to AI, I mean, I work with a team now that fully embraces AI and they use it all the time for many different things.
mhm,
And now I'm like, okay, wait a second. AI is a tool, not this robot that's going to take my job and take over my voice, right? And as creators, we want our voices to be so unique and authentic. And we want people to know that they're connecting with a real human being and they're not just being marketed by a robot, right? And I think that that is kind of a very preliminary way of looking at AI, especially if you've never dabbled in it. And that's exactly where I came from. Last 5 years,
mhm,
I'm AI free. Last 5 weeks, I'm like living with Claude now,
mhm. I
and
get it.
and I'm asking him all these things. And one of the women in my collab book group, right? One of the women that's writing this book with us, she brought up the fact that AI is a tool just like computers are a tool. And back then, when you went from writing with a pen and paper to typing on a computer, now it's so normalized that you're still going to say, I wrote that, even if you typed it, right? Even if you voice to texted it, you still could say, I wrote that because it came from your brain and went onto paper, even if that paper is digital. So, what's the difference between using AI now as a tool? You're still having to finesse and knead through those thoughts, the way that you would knead through dough if you're baking in the kitchen. Like, you're still using AI as a partner the way that you're using a computer or phone as a partner. So, anyway, that was such a tangent, but I wanted to work it into this conversation.
No, this is great, and actually, this is a tangent that I will gladly riff on, because we talk a lot about AI on the show, and I'm very
You
excited for
really
you.
do. And that's why it was top of mind
Yes,
for me. So I'm
we
glad it
can.
feeds your
Uh,
audience.
oh yeah, we can riff on this tangent as much as you want to. Yeah, I am so excited for you that you are like 5 weeks in to using this tool. I've been to sound like such a dork, but like AI and what it's capable of. And so I've been using it. I started using AI writing tools in April of 2021. I had a friend recommend them to me. And my joke is that for back then, it probably worked about as good as like an over caffeinated like college intern that did not have like the best creative discernment.
Yeah.
And it was still saving me so much time. Like, I remember I signed up for a free trial I had what was probably about like 4 or 5 hours of writing that I had to do for a few clients. I think my wife and I were traveling that day, and I had like waited to the last minute to do a couple of these things. And I was like, man, I'm gonna have to like, purchase Wi-Fi on the plane and like do this and stuff. And then I was like, let's try this AI thing and see what works. And I watched it slash like 4.5 hours of writing down to like half when it wasn't that great. And I was like, okay, this is gonna be huge and crazy. And now today, and I think I've talked about this on some shows, maybe not to the extent that I could cover on here. I use AI for everything. I was using an AI project before this show that did a deep dive and research on everything that you have on the internet to pull together questions. And all I did was drop it like your LinkedIn link and YouTube, and it pulled up some pretty cool stuff. And I have SEO coaches that I used to like think with about strategies. I have a training coach for the gym that's like trained on my history of like weightlifting and running and injuries and all of this stuff that I can literally talk to in the middle of the gym and be like, hey, my shoulder's feeling a little tweaked today doing this exercise. What's like a substitution I can do? I use it for everything. My joke is that I probably talk to ChatGPT just slightly more than I talk to my wife these days. And we both work from home, so we see each other all the time.
I'm obsessed with all of that, and just the fact that I want a gym plan, right? You just talked about how you use chat for gym, and it's like I'm over here thinking I need to hire a coach to tell me what to do because I don't know what to do in the gym, and that's an insecurity for me. And then you're creating a whole persona to get to know you, your ailments, what do you personally struggle with, and then what does your gym routine need to look like? And I would even feed in what exercises do I actually enjoy doing versus do I have to do, do I want to
Yes.
do, and how do we change it up so we're not bored, you know?
Yes, that's a perfect use case. You can literally, and I was talking to, my guest. We were talking about him before the show, Dan Sanchez. Dan is a wizard at using AI for all types of different things, and he basically said in so many words, like, if you can write out a step by step process for something in your life or something that you do, there's a good chance that you can train an AI project or a custom GPT, Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, Gems, it doesn't matter, um, to do that thing for you. And one thing that I've started to talk about this more on LinkedIn, and I wasn't sure if people would think it was like an interesting enough topic to continue writing about, but I think it is the whole concept of like writing and using your creative toolkit with AI versus having it do it for you. Because there's a big difference between a person who just like opens up ChatGPT with zero context, like there's no memory on the back end or whatever of who you are and what you do, and just saying like, hey, I need a post about like the top 5 issues with B2B marketers and like how to solve it. It's going to be very generic what it produces. But I have a ChatGPT project that's trained on my entire career history. It has like a 3,800 word doc of basically like everything I've done in my work life. It has basically my entire post history that I've written from it, from like all the chats I've accumulated. It has probably like a couple different 1,000 word docs of audience descriptions. It has what I call a document of like micro stories, which are like good for like hooks and rehooks on LinkedIn of like, these are things that I've done. These are mistakes that I've made. These are lessons I've learned. And so it's effectively like a friend who I've had since the beginning of my career who knows everything about me. So I can go to it and be like, hey, I have 0 ideas to write about this week. What's a core problem my audience has? How can I pair that with a story that I've been through to like connect with them? And it'll come up with ideas. And then I'll be like, oh, this is great. And then I'll do what you just mentioned. I'll just go speech to text, riff on it for a while, have it organize the thoughts into a post,
Mhm.
manually punch it up, send it. And it is still authentically you. It's just literally having somebody who knows you, like almost like some kind of personal executive assistant or something for your life. It's really interesting. So are you kind of doing some of the same stuff with your projects and things you're working on?
Right, yeah, it's basically a virtual EA, you know,
Yes.
and we all deserve our own executive assistants, and again, to my earlier point, you don't need to arrive or be an executive to have these resources, like, you
Yes.
deserve them, you know, and I think it was Dan on your show, and if it wasn't Dan, it was someone else, but he was talking about these processes that we already have in place and just pairing up AI with what we're already working on, and he said something like, if you can define it, then you can delegate it, right? So we can move it off of our plate and we can create something that frees up our minds to be creative and invite new ideas in. And personally speaking, there's nothing worse for my brain than just repeating things in my head so I don't forget them. It's so time consuming. It's such an energy drain. And it's my brain's way of saying, hey, Katrina, you need to get this out of your head so I could give you new ideas because
Mm-hmm.
they're in a backlog right now. So what I'll do is I'll use my notes app or I'll write them, in a journal or on a piece of paper, literally getting it out of my head, or in this case, right, typing it into chat, getting it out of my head. And then you'd be surprised how many thoughts are waiting right behind those initial thoughts. So you may think, oh, it's not that good of an idea. I'll remember it later. And then you find yourself not remembering it later. And maybe because you never allowed it to breathe, right? You didn't give it any room to kind of cultivate on its own. So I would
Mm-hmm.
say in those moments when you have one of those light bulb ideas, write it down and then see if you can sit with the next 2 or 3 ideas that come right after that and see where it takes you and kind
I
of follow
love
that
that.
breadcrumb trail.
I love that piece of advice. Yes, and giving an idea room to breathe. Like you said, you have record it so you don't lose it. I literally, it's so funny that we're talking about this. I had an idea like waking up this morning when I snoozed my alarm and I was like, oh, that'd make a good post. And I nodded back off. And then I woke up and I was like, oh no, it's totally gone. It's absolutely gone and I'm never getting it
And
back.
it
But
never comes back ever.
no. And like, will you have better ones? Yes. And you'll have more because creativity is not this finite resource. It's actually like this paradoxical one that you have where the more you use it, the more you get, which is like really wild. Just like we were talking about exercise. It's like, yeah, you can exercise to the point like, it drains you and you can kick the crap out of yourself in the gym or marathon training or whatever. But creativity is one of those things where the more you use it, the more you get of it. But you do have to record it. And I think what you said about letting an idea breathe too, like I would recommend for like new writers or creators. You don't even have to be a new writer or creator. Just if you're a human having fun ideas, get in the practice of opening up a Google Doc or an Apple Note or a Notion and take it down and just jot down some like ideas for yourself. And like you said, let it sit because your brain has this amazing way of like mulling it over in the subconscious. And this is like what happens when we dream, right? Of like your brain's kind of like connecting all of these dots that may or may not be related. And if you let it mull over a while, it might become something really cool. But if not, it's going to be a building block for another better idea. Like you said, like the 2 or 3 ideas that follow. That's really important.
Mhm. I love how you said that, Jack. I think that's like chef's kiss. Like I can't even add to it because it's so good.
Well, thank you. I don't know that it's that great. I'm doing the same thing other humans do, which is just borrowing a bunch of stuff from a lot of people who are way smarter than me that I've heard before and just putting it
Yep.
together.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
But
it.
you're also sharing it with someone who may not have heard it, from the resources that you're gleaning it from. And how many times do we read books or, listen to a podcast? And then that's the immediate next advice that we give to someone else. It's like, I would die without this advice. You mean the advice you just heard 5 minutes ago? Yeah, it's the best thing
I
ever.
literally have changed my life around in the last 5 minutes. Yes, you're
Right.
totally right. You're totally right. And I think that's one thing too, like, I mean, and this is why I encourage people to make stuff. This is kind of a tangent from AI for a second, but if I could give people a piece of advice, like make something and put yourself out there a little bit because you will get 10x out of it that you put into it. And I think that's what people think in the beginning is like, man, writing a LinkedIn post sounds like so hard and intimidating. And like, I don't want to put myself out there to my job network. And what's my boss going to think or my coworkers? Like, does this look desperate? Does it look cringy? Like, cringe is the LinkedIn, word that all of us feel like. And you see people say, like, lean into the cringe. It's going to be okay. Um, but yeah, like, I think putting yourself out there creatively, and it doesn't matter what the format or the platform or way you get so much back out of it. This is funny, and I've never mentioned this on the show before, but one thing I love to do but scares me is sing karaoke.
Oh,
And I
fun.
have a blast with it. But I always get so nervous before I like go up to sing. Doesn't matter if it's like a dive bar with 10 people, but I just have a lot of fun doing it because you get the bar involved and,
Yeah, I'm
singing.
sure. I
But
like
there's
to be in the audience for karaoke, but I will not get on that stage.
But yeah, it is scary. And like I said, I've played music my entire life, and it is still really intimidating to get up like by yourself because I was used to getting up like with a band. It is scary getting up by yourself, but every time I leave the stage, I'm like I just like have this electric feeling of like that was so much fun. Like you had a party with a bunch of people you don't even know for like 3 minutes of like whatever the
Yeah.
song was.
Yeah.
So I think encouraging people who are listening to this to like put yourself out there in some way is so important because you don't know, like it's going to give back to you 100-fold for what you put into it. And then going back to AI, because I think this would be great to give some people tips around this. And I would love to speak to this on the show. I write about this all the time on LinkedIn, but like if you're a new AI user, your outputs are only going to be as good as the inputs and contexts that you give the machine. So Katrina and I were talking about like you need to be very specific about the outcomes that you want, but you also need to treat the AI like a person. And it sounds really funny because it's not a person, but the more it knows about you, the better that it can extrapolate like where you're trying to get to, who you are as a person. Like I fed it, and this is by recommendation of my friend Matt, who I brought on for my first show. He like built a life coach in AI, and some people will say like that's really dangerous and has led to some like dangerous outcomes. But I think if you use it the right way and you understand the tool, you can get some really positive feedback. Like you can literally tell AI to be any mentor that you could possibly imagine, like your favorite author, your favorite speaker, your favorite business owner or founder. And if it can mine enough data from that person, you can basically channel them through the platform to give you advice on what you want to do. So yeah, and I see you shaking your head
Yeah.
over there like,
I'm like, that is
jeez.
mind blowing to me.
It's crazy. You want to hear a funny use case? So
Yeah,
I
please.
I uh I follow a lot of amazing AI people who are just like I'm operating at like an algebra level, and I follow people who are doing like calculus and quantum physics with AI. Oh yeah, it's crazy. And I saw this one prompt framework where it was basically you tell ChatGPT to simulate that you're at a dinner, like you're at the dinner table with like 2 or 3 of your favorite mentors. And it walks through this entire coaching process to basically tell each of those people to act as exactly as they would be in real life. As you can imagine, this would work really well with somebody like a podcaster because they've put millions of words out and thousands of hours of content so the AI can channel them really well. So I was like, I'm going to test this. So I was like, hey, channel these 3 people as digital mentors. I'm working on this conundrum that I have about it was probably like launching this podcast or something to do with my brand. And no joke, it was like talking to them in a chat field of these people. And the tone and cadence and style of the writing for these people was like, this is something that they would write or say. So if anybody needs a little like coaching advice and you want to go play around with that, it's and Katrina, you should totally test that out too. It's pretty mind blowing.
Definitely going to. And what's funny is when you were first saying that the better the AI knows you, the better it can work with you, it can be a resource to you. And initially, I was going to chime in, with just this thought of anyone who's concerned about that language. Like, yeah, I know we don't want to be known, right? We like to keep our lives private. I grew up like with the whole mindset of privacy, and the world that we live in now, it's very rare to have privacy. Um,
Mm,
so I wanted to kind of caveat that language with context instead of like knowing you. But in this example, you're just
hmm
so true. Like the more you put yourself out there, not just in this quote safe realm of a private conversation with chat, but if you're putting yourself out there on the internet, you will be known, and then other people can tap into this persona that you've created and use it, in whatever way they want to. And I know that sounds scary, but I have to also hope that a lot of people are using it for good and that they have good intentions behind it. I know good intentions don't always lead to good outcomes, but we can only, do what we can with what we know at the time and try to iterate and do better in the future.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And yeah, like like again with any tool can be used for like good or not good things.
Totally. Yeah.
This is kind of like a funnier but cool application actually that just came to mind. We were talking a little bit before the show about Huberman Lab and Andrew Huberman and that podcast. So I just thought of something that I think you'd really enjoy. somebody built, and I think it's still live, and I will send you the link and I can add it to the show notes. But it's a Huberman Lab AI that's trained on all of his show transcripts and all of his episodes. So we were talking about how we both have podcast queues because we're both podcast fans that we'll never work through. We just can't listen to all of the hours that all these hosts that we love of content they're putting out. So I
Yeah.
love that
As
somebody
much as
made
we
it.
would like to, we
Oh
have a
my
lot
gosh, would
within a
love
draw.
to. Yes, but I can't not sleep and just keep listening to podcasts. And we have jobs and we have things we've got to work on. But it's cool because if you have a question about a specific topic, like he covered about like sleep or cold exposure and heat exposure or whatever, you can type it in and it will pull up all the answers and like do like a ChatGPT response to it. It will also show you the episodes where
Wow.
he talked about it. So it's a little bit of a shortcut. But and that's what I really do love about where we're at with AI right now. And this is something that's kind of been blowing my mind, Katrina, is that even the people and the companies that are the leaders here, Claude, ChatGPT and OpenAI, Gemini and Google, those companies don't even know the full capabilities of these things that they're building. And that's why it's such this interesting Pandora's box of like, I'm so curious to hear what you end up experimenting with and creating and exploring. Because there's a guy who I follow on LinkedIn. It was a weird use case, and I hope I'm not misquoting him. Somebody will probably comment and be like, dude, this definitely doesn't work. But he like went to
That's so cool.
ChatGPT. Yeah, of course. But he like went to ChatGPT and was like, hey, I need you to like edit an audio file for me. And it was like, oh, I can't do that. That's not in my capability set. And he was like, okay, I'm going to drop you the audio file and you're going to do this for me. And it did what it needed him to do, even though it said, no, I can't
Oh
do
my
this.
gosh. That's so bizarre. So maybe if I just ask twice, I can get what I really want from it.
Sometimes, yeah, I guess
Wow.
that can happen. Another like interesting use case for people just getting into it. So I was talking about my fitness coach. Well, I'm dealing with a little bit of an imbalance issue, and a lot of it is just like working from a desk so long. It's like I have,
Totally. Yeah.
yeah, and I've got a fitness background too. I was like a part-time personal trainer for, gosh, I think like 10 or 12 years, and I did group fitness classes and stuff. So I know a little bit about anatomy and phys, and it's like I've got an internally rotated like mouse shoulder from like overusing the mouse, and I've got like a little weakness in my torso on my left side from just having like my left hand on my keyboard all day. And so I was like, I wonder if my ChatGPT training coach can help me out with this. So I took a picture of myself and tried to be as symmetrical as possible
Nice. Yeah.
and sent it to it. And I was like, hey, I suspect these things are going on. Is there anything you can tell about like what's going on in my anatomy from this picture that might support or refute that? And it literally gave me a breakdown like it was a physical therapist. And it was like, hey, man, these exercises would probably be really helpful. Do you want me to incorporate them into the program that you've written with me? And I was like, yeah, that would be awesome. And I've been doing them and like for 8 weeks now, and probably had like I would say 50%, 60% reduction in tightness and pain on like the weak torso side. And then on the shoulder side, it's still there. I need to fix my desk setup and ergonomics.
Yeah, and I mentioned that too. When I first started working from home versus how my setup is
Yeah,
now, huge change in ergonomics completely.
huge change, huge. And I need to get on that. But it was really cool to see how the AI can even use a photo
Yeah.
like to, yeah,
I'm really
customize
stunned
results.
by that, and I wanna kinda double click on a couple of things that you're
Sure.
like, the ways that you're using the tool, and hopefully for anyone who's a little bit of a newbie like I am, this will be helpful, and if not, you can fast forward. But my question is around this idea of creating that coach versus leveraging someone else's, version that they've made. So you're talking about having a fitness coach that knows you and sees your photo and can be that PT for you versus
Hmm.
someone that's created like the Andrew Huberman digital version. How would you
Hmm.
tap into these public personas that are already built out? And then is your conversation with them still private? Is it still just within your own account or is it feeding back into that general Andrew Huberman or whoever, AI that's been built?
Ooh, that's really interesting. Just to make sure so I understand what you're asking of basically like how would you train like a synthetic coach basically in AI.
That, but also, like, how would I, practically speaking, when we end this recording, like, how do I
Uh,
go and use this? Where do I find it? You know, what does that look like? And then what are the ramifications of using one of these, like, pre-built things, you know, personas? And maybe I'm, like, misinterpreting what you shared, but
no,
that's
no,
how I
no.
understood it.
Yeah, these are great questions. So I've only used the Huberman AI for like specific questions I need answers to. So basically like, hey, what's the supplement like stack that he recommends for getting better sleep or sleep hygiene or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It'll spit that out. That specific AI tool is not going to give me specific results or outputs or answers tailored to me. So if I wanted to build something that's more tailored to like, hey, this is the Andrew Huberman specialist on Jack or Katrina, I would want to train my own Claude project or ChatGPT project on who Huberman is, his general philosophy, basically everything I can dump it that it can understand. It's like, go read all of his blog posts, go read his podcast summaries, go read the transcriptions, review the guests who's come on his podcasts, like his general philosophy approach, like whatever. And then I would put in the custom instructions for that project. I would tell the thing like, hey, you are Andrew Huberman, the leading expert and podcaster in
Right.
this segment.
Okay.
Your job is to be a personalized coach for me, Jack, on these specific areas. And then I would upload my own data set of things that were related. Like if I had, I don't know, like sleep data from my Apple Watch or Garmin, or like what my fitness program is, or notes, or like dumping those files to it if you have those. Injury history, things like that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, then it's always in this one-to-one format. It's not like you're going somewhere else for someone else's created, you know, version of Andrew Huberman AI.
Y
I feel like
yeah.
I'm piecing together words I'm hearing as if I'm learning a new language and then being like, "Does that translate?"
Yeah, I think so. So, yeah, I think I see what you're saying of where could the iteration that you create of Huberman in your own AI project be different than somebody else's? And I think the answer is yes, because it depends on the training data you tell it to pay attention to and what you feed it. Um, and this is
When you're
something yeah. No, 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 go for it, go for it.
when you're kind of, like, anecdotally sharing how people have created, you know, these AIs like the Andrew Huberman one, or, you know, I want you to create a networking dinner for me because I have, you know, social anxiety and I want to kind of role play what that would be like if these people are at dinner. That's all just individual use cases. That's not something that's accessible publicly.
That's a great question. I would bet, because the internet is enormous, I bet that people and AI has made it so easy to build applications and websites like this. I'm sure if you and I got on Google right now, we're like, hey, is there like a website URL where I can access basically the brain of this person to get,
Right. Okay.
I'm sure it's out there.
Okay. Fair.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you
sure
so
it's out
much
there. Yeah,
for
no
giving
problem.
me, like, a mini AI lesson in the middle of this podcast. But I told you I have a tendency to kind of ask questions and then switch the table up, you know, or whatever.
No, this is great. I think all of this is really helpful. I think for as much as I have talked with guests and asked them about AI on this show so far, it is something that we can't cover it enough. And it's changing all the time, and it's getting better all the time. And they're releasing, updates like GPT-5 came out recently.
Right.
And yeah, because the models got really confusing. I don't know if you're a ChatGPT user at all, but
Not
yeah.
at all. And then when 5 was released, I heard everyone complaining about it, and I was like, "Well, I'm just getting started with AI, so I'm gonna skip right over that and go to Claude instead." And it was mostly just from a Google search. I was like, "Okay, if I what's the difference between Claude and Chat?" Google pretty much said Chat is good for trivia and Claude is good for deeper dives. And I just know myself, like, I like to go deep and have like wide breath and all of that. So I just gravitated towards that. I'm not saying Chat can't do those things, but I haven't played around with it yet. So I don't know. And I've really enjoyed working with Claude. So I'm just kind of sticking with one thing. I like to be more focused in the early
Mhm,
stages because you know, at a certain point, I'm sure they all do the same thing. It's just like, what do you need it to do for you? You know, what's gonna be
mhm.
a better tool for you personally?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you chose Claude. Like I was using Claude daily for, gosh, I want to say like 6 months, like end of last year through the beginning of this year. And the only thing, and they may have changed this because I'm no AI expert. I just,
You just love it.
yeah, I do. I do just love it. I'm just learning so much. The more I learn about it, the more I feel like, Jack, you're a total idiot, dude. You don't know how to use these tools. Like I said, from the physicists of AI that I'm learning from.
Yeah, yeah, and that's all perspective too. I know you were sharing in another episode how you have that imposter syndrome of feeling like, did I bring any value to that call or whatever? But the
Yeah.
truth is, like, when you're always looking up to others, you have one frame of reference. But then when you're speaking to people who are hearing it for the first time, you are that expert, and you can have full confidence that some people are going to know what you're talking about. Some people are going to know more than you, and some aren't going to know any at all. And, we all exist in those different phases at different times in
Yes.
different
Yes,
stages.
you're absolutely right. And then tying that back in, because I like how we're just jumping all around here. For anybody who has imposter syndrome about creating content of any kind on the internet, there are people 6 months, 1 year, 2 years behind you that would love to learn from you. And it doesn't matter if they're already huge people in your category. Those people might seem totally unattainable to them or unrelatable to them. They might rather learn from somebody who's like, well, Jack's a dork. He's got like 3,000 followers. He seems to be into this AI stuff. They don't know the people who I follow who are like mega into this stuff and like super bright, or that might be kind of unattainable or unapproachable for them. I'm just like, man, this is like way over my head. I'd rather listen to this goofball who like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Totally. Or the reality too, like you've already done that grunt work for me and I want you to translate it to me. And guess what? You have the time because you're not one of these big conglomerates, So I think
yeah.
it works out, for whatever people are looking for. You're going to find your people if you're just being authentic and open and realistic with where you are and not leaning into the fake it till you make it idea because you're so afraid of the imposter syndrome.
Yes, and it's so real. Like, I mean, I feel like specifically for our generation, we were held to like really high bars and standards, and we were always like jumping higher. And you brought, oh yeah, all the time. And then so we started doing that for ourselves, right? If we became our own worst critics, we
100%.
were,
We were the first AI like bot, right? For ourselves. It's like I'm going to take all that negative feedback and all that coaching and all of those pressures that I rejected and repelled against intrinsically and then I'm going to put it and download it for myself and then I'm going to be my new coach and my new critic. So no one else needs to even tell me any of this. I'm going to do it for them, you know? And it is very interesting how we keep striving past points of achievement. We're just never satisfied.
I know. And it really is so hard to, I don't know if I heard this from somewhere, if I just came across this myself of like, we're always looking at the mountain we're climbing or the range of mountains we have to climb in front of us, our goals. We're never thinking about what we've already climbed behind us. And we never just like look back and you're like, oh, you know what? Yeah, actually, I've done some cool things. Like I've accomplished a lot. I've made it through some hard stuff.
I mean, the perfect example was in this conversation. You asked me what are some use cases, for writing and how did it transform my life? And I'm kind of like flowering the language, but the only thing I could think of was something that's happening right now, right? What are my current mountains that I'm hiking? I've hiked a million peaks. Do I remember them in this moment? No. I would need to go look at my resume, look at my LinkedIn. Like historically, I've written it down so that I can take stock and I can look back and see the progress and growth that I've had because I think that that is so important. And it's a big reason why I celebrate along the way because otherwise we will just completely forget what we spent so much time working towards and what we've already accomplished and achieved in, you know, in light basically of just trying to go and chase other things and we're never breathing in between and we're never taking the time to just be grateful for ourselves and grateful for everyone that helped get us there. I mean, I just heard something recently where it was like, oh, you know what it was? Steve Jobs, I think this was his like dying email, I'll call it, because the way I understood it was this was the email he sent himself like the day before he died. And whether that's accurate or not, I don't know. But in that were all these quotes to himself and part of the recurring theme was the fact that we can't do anything in life without humanity. We all need each other and nothing exists without all the other human beings on this planet. And it's so easy to question to kind of I guess, like, hypothesize through that. And for instance, like, if you were to go back in time, or if you were the only person on the planet, could you recreate any of the tools and technologies that you're using today? Chances are no, right? None
Mhm.
of us know how any of this works. We just know that it works.
Mhm.
And we could never prove that we're from the future if we went to the past, because we could never make the iPhone, and we could not create the formula for chat, but we could tell people about it, and they'll probably put us in the loony bin because for them it's so far-fetched and it doesn't make any sense, and it's not computing in their minds. And I just like that, Steve's life was such a growth arc, right? Like, he has a time in his life, and he's ENTJ also. And I know before the show you asked me about my personality type. So we're both ENTJs, and maybe that's why I have an affinity for him, because I can see so much of myself in him and vice versa, whatever. But there was a time in his career where he was very much repelling people around him, right? For the focus of getting the work done. He didn't really care about people's feelings. It was all about the task at hand. And then he got sick, and he went through his family issues and whatever other things, right? Like career changes. We all go through career changes that kind of make us question our lives too. And then you get to a point where you kind of take stock and you're like, who do I want to be? And if I die tomorrow, am I happy with how I'm living my life? If this is how I'm spending my final moments, is this where I want to be in life, And it's a great way to kind of just check in with yourself and check, am I on the right trajectory? Am I hiking the right mountains? Were the mountains I just came from indicative of the mountains I want to go to? Or do I need to just get off this trail? Like, I know we have these sunken costs, right? We've been on the trail for so long, but that doesn't mean we have to stay on it forever. And as soon as you notice that you want to change something, just do it. This is your life. It's an experiment. Go experiment with it.
You're totally right. Gosh, so many great notes in there and so much great wisdom. And sunken cost fallacy is something real that happens to all of us. Well, I've been doing this for so long. And well, if I do this for another 5 years, then, I'll make partner or I'll get like a promotion or, I've got all this
You'll
stuff I want to do. But
finally love me. I feel like that's really what it comes down to. It's
yes.
like, I will finally have proven my worth to these people, and
I
then
know.
we
And it's like, what
don't.
about proving your worth to yourself? What
Yeah,
about accepting yourself and being happy with you and
yeah.
what you're doing,
Mhm.
Yeah, 100%. Gosh, one thing I was gonna say, because I think, gosh, you said so many incredible things in there, Katrina, that we could touch on and chase all sorts of rabbits. But yeah, I think being grateful and then recognizing what you've been able to accomplish so far will help dissolve imposter syndrome of like, hey, you've already made it through everything that you've been through. That's pretty good evidence that you're gonna make it through the next thing and you're gonna be better and stronger and smarter through what you're going through.
100%.
And yeah, thank you. And I want to tie this back into, I know this is kind of a hard right turn, but I want to talk to you about what your goals are for yourself right now with your community and your podcast. And if your answer is like, dude, I'm just having fun doing this right now, I have no idea where it's going, that
Yeah,
is a totally fine answer. But if you're like, hey, actually, this is kind of what I envision
right.
for my brand and the podcast and where I'm going, go for it.
Yeah. I think the timing of your question could not be better. And I just started a new job 3 months ago or so. And before this job, so literally 90 days ago, I would have been like, I'm just doing this for fun, right? And that was my answer for the last 5, 6 years. I'm just doing this for fun. People always ask me, what's your ROI with podcasting? I don't do it for an ROI. I do it because I'm trying to build community. It's authentic, it's genuine, blah, blah, blah. I'm not trying to monetize anything. And that's still the case. I don't want anyone to get that twisted. But what's interesting is where I am now with my life and my career, I really feel like I manifested this. I'm at this crossroads now where I have so much more clarity on who I am, what my skills are, where I excel and where I don't excel, where I want to be and who I want to be surrounded with or surrounded by, right? And as I go into that next phase of life and the next chapter, and as I'm creating my journey, I want to continue growing in that way, learning from all the best people. So I'm much more strategic now And by now, I mean, even in the last week, right? From using chat for the last month, I'm already thinking more strategically about my life because it's been this mirror reflection and a soundboard for what I'm already doing, what I'm already cultivating. And now I can see it spelled out in a way that isn't my typical stream of consciousness, right? It is very clearly outlined, it's organized, it's focused. And if it's not, I can ask, hey, can you focus in on this, right? I need more clarity here, blah, blah, blah. So I think I'm more focused right now because of the tool of AI. And I'm
Mm,
so grateful for that because whether we know where AI itself is going to go, I already know I'm going to be transformed by the power of using it as a tool in this
mm,
next wave for myself. And so to answer your question like even more simply, my podcast originally and creating content on LinkedIn originally was to grow my network because I value just meeting new people. And it was never about how does this trace back to my job, right? And I think that as a creator, you kind of go through these motions of do you even identify as a creator? Do you want anyone to know that this is what you do? You know, you mentioned too that you shared with your friends and family that you were doing a podcast. And I know your wife is on board. She completely like told you go run and do it. But what I've found, and I don't know if this is the case for you, the closer people are to me, the less likely they are to have engaged with my content. I would say my close friends and family probably never listen to my podcast and they are not watching my stuff on LinkedIn, right? It's these people that are 2 and 3 and 4 degrees away from us that are engaging and consuming our content and getting to know this public digital persona that we're creating. So now that I'm in this trade show strategist role, right? And I'm in this world of trying to pair companies with brand strategy that maybe they wouldn't have had on their own. And I want to take everything I've learned over time to be a good strategist for them, a great partner for them. And then also do my employer proud, right? Like, how do I give back to the company that's investing in me? They're teaching me all these resources. They're, blah, blah, blah. And any company, hopefully, if you're in the right environment, you have the right fit, you do feel the way I'm describing. And if not, I would invite you to sit with that and find out what is your right fit. And then get there because I will say it's worth it if you can find that, right? And that goes back to just living life on purpose and not running away from your day job and escaping into the weekend because you hate your life. Like, I don't think we need to live a life we hate. I think it takes time and energy to live a life you love. And it's not always easy to ask yourself these tough questions. And it does lead to maybe changing up your friend groups because they're not aligned. But I still think it's worth going through those pain points for your own growth and development, right?
mm,
And I feel like you talked about speaking from evidence and experience, right? I feel like the way I've lived my life and what I've been able to achieve and accomplish for myself is true evidence for the potential I see in other organizations and what I hope to help them with for themselves, right? Like, I want to take what I've done for myself personally and professionally and help them along their own trajectory. So whatever that looks like, I feel like it's a little too much to boil down on this like call or this episode because every single situation is so unique. But I really want the messages I'm conveying now to reach my ICP, my ideal client profile. I
mm,
want them to be more targeted. I want them to land in the audience that's actually going to feed back into my day job. No longer are they in a silo or separate. I want them as integrated as possible. And I've never wanted that before because it's never made sense to want that. It hasn't been aligned with my goals, you know, but right now I can say that my work and my home and my life and all these things are really integrated and I want them growing together. And I see that conversations like this, being a guest on your show, I'm hoping that on some way or on some level, it will really lead to those conversations and those new connections that I wouldn't have met otherwise. And those are the fundamentals for me of networking. It's like, how do I put myself out there to expose myself to new situations and people that I wouldn't get to do or experience otherwise? And
mm.
it's as simple as that. It's like, okay, what can I do to get there? And I think just being open leads to all these opportunities.
Gosh, I think you crushed that answer. Even if
I
that was a
appreciate that.
totally
That's the first I've been asked that question and given that answer, so I appreciate that.
well, you crushed it, and I think I mean, not that my opinion matters, but I think that you covered so many important things in there, and I think a huge one is that the plan doesn't have to be specific. Like you know, like I told you earlier on that my goal when I started this, like I wasn't gonna like be the dude who said, "Oh, I'm just gonna start a podcast and do 2 episodes and flake out." I was like, "You're gonna do 100 episodes by this time next year, and even if you fail and do half that, you came a long way,
You
and you can
still did
still."
half that. Yeah, you still have 50 out there.
Yeah, so the goal doesn't always have to be specific. If you like the thing you're doing and you're blocking out time to do it every day or every week, and as long as you're enjoying it, like keep going. And if you stop enjoying it, address why you're not enjoying it, make it enjoyable again, or like you said, look at a different peak and go climb something else. But the thing that I really love that you touched on is that I think we view things that we do as silos. And I'm glad that you said that. And it's way better, and it's just kind of a huge, like, mind opener and unlock when you realize, like, why can't all of these things be related? Like, even we were talking about fitness, like, I've been exercising now for 20 years, which is, like, crazy to say. 21 next year. That's wild.
That is wild.
It's wild, but I was actually obese when I was younger and bullied and stuff, and that was my motivation to start exercising and lose weight. And that decision-making process, habit building, self-discipline, all of the things that it took to build that habit and get the results I did, and then a lot of the results that came from it have made a positive net impact on literally every area of my life, from like the simplest thing you can imagine to like gaining depth and compassion for people and being a better listener. And I think when you start to look at all of these things you're doing in your life as an integrated system. So like here's a really like I think fundamental example to this show, but also for people listening of like take LinkedIn. LinkedIn used to be this place where it was like you're either going there because you're a company who wants to hire somebody, or you're desperate and you don't have a job and you're looking for a job, and that was it. And around the last 5 or 6 years, this has all changed to where there's a lot of people on here who are like freelancers and they're trying to build their business, and they're doing that through building a brand or cold DMs or whatever. You have people who are linked influencers who are just like, I'm just trying to grow a big audience so that I can get, whatever I'm looking for out of this at some
Mhm.
point. And I think that people are like, oh, if you're talking about, it seems like the people closest to you are the ones who are least participatory with the things you're creating. And then all of these people you don't know come out of the woodworks and they become supporters and friends
Mhm.
and all of this stuff. People I hear all the time like, dude, I can't, like, because I'll encourage friends I used to work with. I'm like, dude, you should just start posting on here. It'll give you opportunities. And they're like, man, if my current employer sees that, they're going to be like, are they trying to jump ship? Are they doing all this? And I'm like, no, these aren't mutually exclusive things.
Mhm.
If you're posting and building your brand, so like I write about things I do for my day job. I write about content marketing and I write about SEO. This could very well be a channel for me in the future where it's helping me grow things for the company who I work for that I love, which is awesome. Because if I get some people through my pipeline on LinkedIn, they're like, hey, Jack, I read this thing that you talked about, like Google's most recent algorithm update or things that are going on with AI overviews. You want to hop on a call and talk about SEO? That becomes a client. That's part of your business. At the same time, I'm building my audience. I'm building my credibility with these businesses. I'm building my community. I'm growing my network. I'm continuing to cut my teeth as a writer because it's something that you improve on your entire life. Growing my email list for hopefully inbound. Like I have specific goals for this. Like in my 20s, I created like 30 plus courses, and that was like a big part of my career. I taught fitness courses on Udemy and Skillshare. And I'm getting back into that now. So it's like I am turning this into an offer that once people get in my pipeline, it's like, yeah, like I want to have a coaching offer. I want to have a course. I want to have AI templates for writing content creation research that people can get into. I want to build this, playground of different like options for people of just like choose the adventure, choose your favorite adventure. Here and one that works best for you. But I think that's what people miss is like, they think like, oh, I only go to LinkedIn if I need a job or to pick up clients
Mhm.
or I can't post on here because my employer is going to get suspicious. It's like, why don't you go to your employer? Like, I'm actively having these conversations with my clients right now, and I want to have this with our leadership team too. Of like, I'm telling my clients, it's like, you need to get your CMO writing on LinkedIn because people don't care about brand pages. They do not care about your logo. They're not paying attention to that. But if you have the person who's leading this department at your company, or your founder, or just your marketing team on there writing about cool things that you were doing, that's who people are buying from right now. That's companies and how they build loyalty. Like one of my favorite brands of the last few years, Liquid Death. I don't know if you're familiar with
Yes,
them.
of
They're
course.
I love them,
Yeah.
and they're huge, and they've literally blown up sparkling water, and it's incredible what they've done. But they have really cool people who are very engaged online, and they know their audience, and they're creating content for them,
Mhm.
and they're active. And that's where I think we need to, going back to what you said about all of these things working together, I think people need that perspective of like, hey, this one thing you're doing isn't just the one thing.
Mhm.
It can actually raise up like five, it's like a rising tide raises all ships. You posting on LinkedIn could put you out there to get an inbound client lead, to get a new opportunity. Could be the thing that you need to get people at your company or organization like on board with, so you guys can like, like build what you're doing. Like it's all, or build the thing yourself. It can be both. It can be all of those things.
Absolutely. And it really moves the mindset away from being transactional, right? If people are
Yes.
just looking at a platform of what can I get out of this, that is so two-dimensional and it's so short-sighted as well because you're just checking in with your network when you need something and want something and then you're dipping out again when they can't serve that purpose for you.
Yes. Yes. You're totally right.
And I
Well,
think
with it,
oh,
oh yeah, go for it. Go for it.
I was just going to say too, I think relationship currency is so important and it's something that people don't think about enough, right? They think about monetary currency and what can I buy, either for myself or, how do I buy love or I don't know why buying love comes to mind, but I feel like that could be transferred into business too. It's like, how can I pull strings to kind of manipulate and coerce people to doing what I want, right? And getting the outcomes I'm going for where the ends justify the means. Like, I don't believe in those approaches, and yet that's exactly what transactional business encounters entail, really. Like, you're just checking in when you need something. You're only thinking about yourself and not in a healthy self-care way of selfishness. It's like truly selfish and not helpful to your network. And I think a lot of times we hear things on LinkedIn about like giving deposits, right? Like, how do I engage with other people's content so that, like you said, all ships rise with the tide and all of that? What I've noticed too, and this is just my observation, I know we've chatted about like the nuances of dynamics that we see on LinkedIn, and I can't speak for everyone, but this is just something I really take to heart people that will reciprocally engage with content, right? Like, if I engage with your content, are you noticing my efforts and are you reciprocating them?
Mm,
Whether you message me on LinkedIn or you respond to my comment or you actually go to my posts and interact with my own posts because 'cause I'm putting out enough content that you shouldn't have to look very hard to give me something, right? But if you're not following that law of reciprocity, then I have to wonder what your agenda is, right? And my takeaway typically is like maybe I'm not your ICP, right? I'm not your target audience who's going to pay your bills, so you can't be bothered to treat me like a human being. And that's a choice. And
mm,
I think it works for some people who truly are laser focused and their right pod is engaging with their content and they're going viral and they're achieving the metrics that they're going for so they don't feel the need to quote bother with the little people. But I think all of us serve a purpose, right? We can't do anything without one another. Your posts wouldn't be going viral if we're not engaging with them, so you should really appreciate who's spending time on your page, who's pausing their scroll to interact with your content, and why are they doing that. There must be something that's resonating, which is a fruitful ground for connection, and it's ripe too for miscommunication. So depending on how you handle those moments and those efforts can really make or break or positively influence and impact your business, or it can have the opposite effect.
Gosh, you're totally right. I love that. I think it's so important for people to think about like who you're trying to reach, who your people are or who your ICP is or your community. And I think it is, you have to look at reciprocity, because if you're out there and you're dumping like 100 comments a day on LinkedIn, and then you notice that of those 100 people, it's like 3 people are like getting back to you. It's like, I mean, think it's like friendships or relationships, right? It's like if you're the person who's putting in 99% of the work and you're getting back 1%, nobody's going to be in that long. Like you need to get out of there. But if you start seeing reciprocity, and I was kind of writing about this a little bit today, how even though I have been a ghostwriter for founders and company owners and executives and even like celebrities, which is really interesting. Like earlier when I first started, in the early days of social media, not to date myself too much.
I love learning more about you though, and like where you came from and how you're here now. So
It's a
I
goofy
think that's
long story,
awesome.
Katrina. We'll jump back on and we'll just talk
Yeah.
history the next
We'll
time.
have to do this round two, I think.
We will do round 2. I want to have everybody who I've had back on, just because it's been, it's so much fun, and I learned so much from you and everybody who I've had on the show. It's like you have to do multiple episodes because there's just too much richness of everything we're talking about to dig into. And with that, I totally lost my train of thought, which was where I was going
You were,
about.
yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh, don't worry about it. But one thing that I was gonna say. Oh yeah, I was talking about reciprocity and like finding your people. Like my audience recently has actually kind of surprised me of who's drawn to my content, because it's not who I expected. So now I'm kind of toying around with like, oh, do I need to reposition my content, or is because what I'm writing really coming from my heart and soul, I reposition around this thing because this is who is connecting with this, and I think the latter is the answer. And with that, I really appreciate all your time. I know, like sitting down, you're hosting a podcast. You know how much of a time commitment it is. You also know how much fun it is, and I've had a blast having you on. And I would kind of like to wrap this up with, if you have parting words of advice or tips for anybody who's listening to this, who's on the cusp of like, gosh, like this all sounds good. It seems like there's a lot of great like non-monetary and potentially monetary benefits of like this whole writing and building a brand thing. Should I write on LinkedIn? Should I start a podcast? Should I start doing YouTube videos? As somebody who's already, years into this and you've crushed it for yourself, like
Thank
what advice would you give to people who are just kind of like on the fence of like, oh, I'm kind of nervous to do this. Like, what should I do?
Right. You hear it all the time. It truly just comes down to just getting started. But I would also take it a step further of just being patient with yourself and giving yourself grace to figure it out. One of my final thoughts, even on this episode for myself, is just admitting that I may have not said everything I wanted to say on this episode, or I may think of other things later on that feed right into this conversation. So always leaving space for yourself that you will grow and you'll want to iterate, and you may want to expound upon something, and you may want to go in a new direction, and all of that's fine. But if you don't get started, you won't have any proof points to look back to. You won't have the evidence that you can accomplish these things. And you're just putting feathers in your cap, right? Or whatever phrase you want to use. And I know we've thrown out a lot of metaphors and, cliches on this recording, but they exist for a reason, um, and and I think it's just that. It just comes down to asking yourself what you want to do and then following your intuition to getting it done, and being open to the fact that you can figure it out as you go. You don't have to have all the answers today or even in this moment. There's always time to make it happen.
Those are incredible pieces of advice. I think getting started, the longer people procrastinate doing something they feel like they need to do, you start building this like monster of a thing up in your head of like, oh man, it's like becomes harder to rip the Band-Aid the longer you put it off. But the quicker you can go from, I have this idea, I'm just going to do this thing. Like I talked about with you, and you did too, of like starting your podcast. Like, this is a thing that I think I need to do. Let's just go ahead and try it and see what happens. Like, you take away that anxiety and you don't build it up to be this beast of a thing that it's not really. Like, it's in your mind. So like, if a person who's listening to this, if their first step is like, go post like a 10 or 15 second like YouTube short, like that is such low hanging fruit. Post a 10 or 15-second video to LinkedIn to just say hey to everybody and put yourself out there. That's such an easy first step to
Yeah.
do. And I think once you get there, it's way easier to keep momentum. So thank you for for saying that, Katrina.
100%. And you'll be surprised about the community that rallies around you. And like you said, Jack, it can come from places you didn't expect. But I don't think that means that you need to change up your strategy, because keep in mind, your ICP could be lurking and watching what you're doing, right? So you still want to show up authentically and have that element that is resonating with people. And those are the ones who are willing to engage with your content. And then you'll be surprised who shows up in your DMs or emails you out of the blue. Hey, I've been seeing what you're doing and I love what you're doing. You know, let's chat.
Yeah. And that's all data and feedback, right? Of like I was talking about with my analytics and what I've seen. As soon as you get a few of those messages, those are breadcrumbs of like, okay, this is the direction I need to go in. Well, Katrina, thank you so much for coming on the show and taking time out of your Sunday and your weekend to just nerd out about all this fun stuff, AI, brand building, things you're working on and doing. And I will have you back on in the future because I can't wait to hear what you're going to accomplish in the next few months and the next year.
Love that, Jack. It's been an absolute pleasure. You're an incredible host. And
Ah,
honestly, I can say that as an authority figure in
you are an authority. You've got me beat by like 10x the amount of episodes. So thank you.
no.
That does mean a lot.
Yeah, no, this has been amazing. And anyone who's, on the fence about being a guest on your show, I hope they really take you up on the offer whenever you invite them to the show, because this was
Awesome.
great.
Well, thank you, Katrina. That means a lot. And then right back at you. Well, I appreciate you coming on. And thanks for listening to everybody out there. And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of It Pays to Write. If you enjoyed this show, please be sure to like and subscribe on all the platforms we're on, currently on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and Substack. And I've got something extra special for you listeners of this episode today. If you're thinking about taking the plunge with writing, I have a free 5-day email course that'll get you started with AI and digital writing online, whether you want to start your own blog or if you want to write on LinkedIn or another social media platform. This is a free course just for you to dip your toes into writing online. You can get that course for free by signing up at aiwritingroadmap.com. That's aiwritingroadmap.com. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next episode.